You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, nutrition, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere, anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your hosts, Dr. Justin Marchegiani and Barris Harvey, as they answer your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Welcome to another awesome episode of Beyond Wellness Radio. In today's show, we are talking brain hacking, brain supplements, and overcoming brain fog. But before we dive into the show today, let me tell you about our newsletter. Make sure you go to beyondwellnessradio.com and hop on the newsletter. By going onto the newsletter, you'll be the first to see all of our updates on our podcast and any other awesome information that we have for you. Also, I want to make sure that you guys go to justinhealth.com, which is Dr. Justin's site, where he has all of his content and information for you. And he also has a video series on thyroid health that you guys should definitely dive into. It's loaded with information and helpful tactics that you can start implementing today. So make sure you go to justinhealth.com and sign up for the newsletter. Also, go to reallyhealthynow.com and you can sign up to that newsletter as well, and you can be ready to receive the first copy of my book as soon as that's done. So that's what's up for today. So Dr. Justin, how's it going?
Barris, it's going great today. Had a nice little morning here. Just running a current across my wrist here to help stimulate some collagen repair. Just hit a little bit of PQQ, which is a compound to help upregulate mitochondrial function and actually repair mitochondrial neurons. So I'm doing that to make sure I'm in the zone today. And breakfast today was just 4 eggs, sunny side up, and then a little bit of protein powder afterwards with some butter and MCT in my coffee. How about you?
Oh, yeah, awesome. Well, I drove down from the Bay Area this morning, so I actually had some trail mix. Had some organic beef jerky and had some cashews, almonds, and a little bit of cranberries. So that was my snack for this morning.
I'm glad to hear you had no oatmeal in your trail mix.
No oats, none of that, no.
Good. That would definitely be a failure.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you mentioned the PQQ that you're taking. And in today's show, we're going to talk about kind of like this brain hacking. This is kind of like a big thing. But even for people that aren't necessarily trying to hack and optimize like brain function, there's a lot of people today that have just like brain fog or overall issues. Let's help all these listeners out and try to find a way to remove some of those things that are blocking their brain from doing what it should be able to do, and get people able to focus, able to sustain a long day, able to fully utilize, I believe, which is our superpowers as humans, is our brain power.
Absolutely. And before we go into that 100%, I think it's important. There are some great supplements out there, and I'm all into biohacking and tweaking certain things. But I just want to say, if you don't have the foundations right, you're just going to be pissing your money away on a lot of expensive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Like, I get results with my patients because I'm annoying about the foundations. So
yeah,
let's go over like some of the foundations. So if you're having brain fog is typically a cause of inflammation. So if you're having inflammation, just look at the first couple of things. Just do an audit first of physical stress. Are you over-exercising? Are you not getting enough exercise? Personally, my biggest thing on exercise is the fact that it helps with brain stimulation. It helps with increasing a protein known as brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps increase synaptical activity, which means it helps connect brain neurons together, right?
Yeah.
If brain neurons communicate faster and better, you are going to be able to have better brain power. You're going to be able to myelinate better. You're going to be able to create better habits faster. You're going to be able to perform better, have better stamina, better focus, be in the zone longer and easier. So again, I look at things like exercise as more like stimulating brain as well as hormones. Okay, that's like one foundation. Don't exercise too much because chronic cortisol from over-exercising will eat away parts of your brain. Dr. Robert Sapolsky over at Stanford, he wrote the book Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. He's kind of a stress doctor. He looks at the stress response from one species to another. And what he's found is that excessive levels of cortisol literally will eat away at the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is area in the brain, the bottom part of the brain, that helps control memory and learning. So Again, let's get cortisol modulated so we're not eating away our hippocampus. So on the physical stress side of things, don't over-exercise. Choose smart exercise. So smart exercise could be anything depending on where you're at, right? If you're obese and you're not doing much, just get out walking a little bit. Get out, do some isometric movements where you're doing an isometric lunge or an isometric squat with really good form. If you're already to there, some resistance training will be good using functional movements, right? Squatting, pulling, pushing, bending, things like that are going to be great. And then if you're there as well, you can also add in some high intensity interval training using whatever modality you want, whether it's rowing or biking or running or sprinting. You don't have to make exercise that complicated. Now, if you're training for sport-specific things because you're an athlete or you're competing, well, obviously you have to do the movement pattern that you're going to be competing in, or choosing movements that are going to translate to performance on the field. So we're not getting into sport-specific stuff. We're just getting into how can you make your muscles and your body perform well physically, but also how can you do it so you can choose movements that will mentally allow you to perform well and make more BDNF.
Definitely. So I think that's a great portion because like you said before, we have to understand that our bodies were designed to move, and not only is movement just going to help us, burn fat or build muscle, but there's also some brain activity that's going on, and the communications with the neurons between your muscles. And just like you mentioned earlier, you have a stimulation thing currently running through your wrist, and it's using electricity and stimulating your muscles. And we have to understand, like, those are brain chemicals that kind of manipulate our muscles, and having that awareness is really good way to stimulate our body. And also not to overdo it though, and not to stress your body out.
Exactly.
Because it's easy to do that as well.
Exactly. Like, for instance, I'm stimulating production or increased blood flow, which will hopefully translate to additional collagen being lying down and to help build up cartilage. But I'm also sleeping really well. I'm also eating very anti-inflammatory. I'm eating, high anti-inflammatory fats. I'm also taking extra collagen support, so I have the building blocks, right? A lot of biohacking devices, they stimulate, but the problem is if you don't have the building blocks, then it's like whipping a tired horse. So if you combine the two, it's almost like magical.
Yeah, definitely. You just mentioned too, you're eating a really good diet,
Yeah.
and diet plays a big role. And there's a lot of foods that can be beneficial. One food in particular, when it comes to like fats, is something that you often put into your coffee every day, or even might cook with, and that's caprylic acid from like coconut oil, right?
Yeah.
So could you tell us about how like MCTs can be beneficial to our brain?
Okay, so MCTs, they're medium chain triglycerides. You're going to get some MCTs in coconut oil. The problem is MCTs typically consist of capric and caprylic acid, 8, 10, and 12 carbons in length. So those are kind of your medium chain triglycerides. The problem is most of your MCTs are going to be the 12 carbons. So taking in supplemental MCT that's 8 and 10 carbons primarily, or you're going to primarily get 8 and 10 carbons in MCT. So people say, oh, well, you get enough MCT in coconut oil. In my opinion, that's nonsense because you're not getting the beneficial ones, the 8 and 10 carbon ones. So using MCT is going to be awesome. Using it in your coffee is great. So there's a researcher out of Harvard, Dr. Veach, and he's done a lot of research on ketogenic diets. And basically, ketogenic diets is your body using various ketones, whether it's acetic acid, acetone, or hydroxybutyrate, things like that. Your brain can actually run on them. He's done research to show up to 80% of your brain can run on them. So there's a couple ways to think about it, right? Some people may benefit cutting their carbs super low. That's one theory. That's one approach that may work. Some people may do a cyclical ketogenic where they go low carb, 20, 30, 40 grams of carbohydrate. And that's a little debatable because Ben Greenfield's done some research showing that he's been able to keep his carbs at 200 and still been in ketosis. So it really depends upon your activity level. So we have the dietary aspect, but we can also just put something like MCT, which will easily shunt downstream into ketones. So we can still have the benefits of ketones even if we're not going super, super, super low carb.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that's one aspect. And he's found that the brain can run very efficiently off these MCTs. And some areas of the brain absolutely love it. So you kind of get the same kind of physiology that you would get with fasting. So a lot of research has shown that your brain does better, fasting sometimes. That's kind of where the whole school of thought of intermittent fasting or low-calorie dieting has shown beneficial effects. In my opinion, you can derive and tap into some of these benefits by using MCT in your coffee to get some of these benefits that, so you don't have to starve yourself, so you actually feel full and satiated and not tired and not downregulate your thyroid, because low-calorie diets will mess up your thyroid. Just go to PubMed and type in low-calorie diets and hypothyroidism, and you'll see a whole bunch of studies on that. So that kind of gives you just a bird's eye view off the top there.
Okay, cool. So we're not going to go be glucose. We're not going to be glucose deficient, are we?
Well, your brain needs about 20 grams of glucose a day to function. So if you're getting enough fat in your body and you're keto adapted, meaning your body's used to running off of ketones, you're not going to have a problem. Although I do recommend, if you're doing more glycolytic exercise, you're probably going to feel better getting a little bit of sweet potato in your diet, a little bit of safe starch in your diet if you're doing a CrossFit style of movement. So it really depends. Like some people who are, I would say, they're carbohydrate sensitive, meaning they can't tolerate much carbohydrates. You're better off starting ketogenic and not going into some of these high intense glycolytic movements for at least a long period of time, because you want to get your body keto adapted, and you can create lots of cravings if you're doing glycolytic movements for longer than 45 minutes of an hour. Like if you're someone who's maybe has metabolic syndrome and you're just jumping into a CrossFit, may not be the best thing for your blood sugar and your metabolism off the bat. A good ramp up may be a better way of doing it, and starting ketogenic can be a good way to really feed the brain with those ketones that it may need.
Yeah, awesome. So we're talking about getting the foundation right. You also mentioned that's one of the real big reasons why you're successful with your clients, because you harp a lot on the foundations, on the basics, making sure you remove the inflammatory foods and getting the anti-inflammatory, antioxidant foods into their diet.
Right.
I think one of those foods that people know that are good for the brain, and like when more of the culture is like, oh, like berries. Berries are really good. They're good for your brain because of, their antioxidants.
Yeah.
What are some other just good foods that we should be adding to our diet, like that might have really good flavonoids or other kind of brain nutrients or minerals that we might not be getting, but we should?
So one, making sure you're eating foods that are going to stabilize your blood sugar, because blood sugar dips are actually going to cause problems in your brain, right? You're going to increase microglial cell activation with low blood sugar dips. So I would say not just what to eat, but eating the right amounts of protein, fats, and carbohydrates for your body to have stable blood sugar for at least 4 or 5 hours, because that will prevent dips in blood sugar, and those dips in blood sugar will create hormonal cascades that will, again, you'll go into a low blood sugar dip that will activate the adrenal glands to produce adrenaline and cortisol, and that will activate the microglial cells in the brain to produce glutamate, and you'll basically starve the frontal cortex for blood. And again, that's why a lot of people do stupid things with low blood sugar. There's actually a couple of studies on this. They've done studies of violent crimes where they find a lot of violent crimes are done with super low blood sugar, crimes of passion, because you got about, I want to say it's 1/10 of a second to have the frontal cortex clamp down on the impulse of punching the guy that you're really pissed off at. So if your brain's starving because your blood sugar is dipping up and down because you're going into reactive hypoglycemic drops in blood sugar, it's just going to make you stupid and make you do stupid things.
Yeah, so basically that front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex is going to be basically like turned off, and your decision making, basically the thing that makes us human, right?
Yeah.
Is going to be turned off, and you're just going to be a baboon, literally.
Yeah, you're like literally functioning or relying upon the brainstem, right, the reptilian brain to make, very reactionary, stupid decisions. So like the concept I'm referring to is reactive hypoglycemia. That's when you eat potentially too much carbs for your body to handle. Your body reacts, right? It's called reactive. So your body reacts by spitting out a whole bunch of insulin and drops that blood sugar too low. When that blood sugar is too low, the fight or flight nervous system has to turn on, And that turning on activates parts of the brain that can create glial activation, which is like the immune cells in the brain, and that can activate inflammation and starve out blood flow to that frontal cortex, and that can prevent you from making good decisions.
So don't eat the little chocolates when that's on the counter when you're buying a car decision or any of those type of things.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just like,
Make sure you're well fed.
yeah, like that's why I'm a big thing of, having breakfast in the morning. Like even things like good coffee and butter and fat, if you're under a lot of stress and maybe you're exercising too, have a little bit of protein and fat together in the morning. Not just fat, but have a little bit of protein as well. Because protein, you can always convert some of those amino acids into glucose via gluconeogenesis. Your liver can take some of that protein and just cleave it up and create some glucose from it. And when you go through gluconeogenesis, it's a nice time release form of glucose. It's time release. So you actually get a nice, slow and steady supply so you don't get this reactive hypoglycemic drop afterwards.
Okay, perfect. So we want to make sure that we're stabilizing our blood sugar. We don't want to be making irrational decisions. What are some other things? I know there's one probably beneficial one that you ate this morning was eggs, right? Eggs have B vitamins and choline. You test a lot of people in your practice. Are you seeing some people, even though it's like seems like it's such an easy fix, people that are B vitamin deficient and they can easily take maybe some B vitamins or making sure that they're getting some darker meats or some organ meats to making sure that they're getting the B vitamins covered and helping their neurons.
Right. So regarding with patients in the practice, we may see on a CBC some of their indices high. These are like the markers like the MCH, MCHC, MCV, RDW. These can be markers that are indicative of B vitamin issues like B6, B9, B12. We may run organic acid tests and find some of these B vitamins low. I'm seeing a lot of people with methylation defects, especially the MTHFR reductase defect. So we're using some specific folate that's been, converted to an L isomer form so it can be converted better to folate. Obviously, seeing a lot of people with gut issues too that have damage and that aren't able to absorb B12 as well. So it really depends. I mean, people, if they're eating a bad diet, high in refined sugar, they're automatically going to have B vitamin issues because you need B vitamins to absorb and metabolize sugar. And if the sugar that's coming in doesn't have B vitamins with it, you're going to become deficient. And again, most of the time, if people are eating good quality grass-fed meat, organic vegetables, safe carbohydrates for their metabolic demands, they're going to be okay. And then we'll kind of follow up with a good general multivitamin with some really good absorbable B vitamins there, or we'll look at the blood work or the organics test, and we may supplement with some individual ones depending on their unique deficiencies.
Yeah, interesting. Because it's funny too. Oftentimes people are sold just poor forms of like B vitamins inside of the 5-hour energy or something like that, and it's usually just like caffeine and B vitamins, but it's like $3 or $5 per dose.
Yeah, you definitely get what you pay for. When it comes to supplements, I mean, I've tried to research the best companies where you're going to get the best absorption and the best bang for your buck. So going with good companies is definitely the way to go, and saving money on it. I mean, you're better off not taking anything for sure. But supplements, they're meant to supplement a good diet. They aren't called replacements. They aren't designed to replace the diet. They're meant to, you take them with your grass-fed meat and your really good spinach salad or your safe starch. It's meant to supplement. Like nails, right? Like the food's like the board and the nails are like the vitamins. So we want to use good vitamins to hold everything together.
Yeah, definitely. One thing, as I yawn, we should probably bring up briefly is sleep. And we've done a whole episode on sleep before. So people, make sure if you guys haven't heard, go back into our archives and make sure that or just even go to YouTube and search Sleep Beyond Wellness Radio. When we talk about sleep and how it affects the brain, people should know this immediately, but for some reason, we still find ourselves, or many people, not necessarily me all the time, sleeping 6 hours and then wondering why we're having this crash in the middle of the day and, going to Starbucks and trying to get coffee. Briefly, just to talk about again, how important sleep is, but also how, it affects your mental focus.
So sleep is vitally important. I got an email from Ben Greenfield this week, and he posted a really cool blog via WellnessFX, and he also put a really cool infographic on board too. And some really good quotes in this article, and we'll put it in the show notes, from athletes regarding their sleep time. So for instance, I got a couple of quotes here. Let me pull it up. So Usain Bolt, right, fastest guy in the world, says, "Sleep is extremely important to me. I need to rest and recover in order for the training I do to be absorbed by my body." That's one person right there. Roger Federer gets on record 11 to 12 hours of sleep a night. LeBron James, 12 hours of sleep a night. Again, there are studies that show after 4 days of restricted sleep, athletes' maximum bench press drops 20 pounds. Studies have shown split-second decision-making ability reduced by about 5%. And again, tennis players with adequate sleep get about 42% boost in their accuracy of their shot. So again, sleep is very, very important.
Yeah, check this out. I've mentioned to you before, my football team, we work out at like 6 a.m. and which means to get to the facility.
It's the worst thing a coach can do. That's the stupidest thing. It's like you got this mindset in sports where it's like toughness comes from like crucifying yourself. It's like stupid training. It's just like, well, we can just be better by having willpower and not using our physiology to help us get better. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, that's totally true.
It drives me nuts.
But check this out. I forget why we did this. I'm glad that we did, but I think we had our bye week. So last week we decided not to have our 6 a.m. lift in the morning, and we basically, I got to sleep in a little bit, and we instead worked out in the afternoon around 3 o'clock when your body's most primed to do so. This was the first week in about 6 weeks that I remember being like physically sore. Like my legs felt sore in a good way, as if like, oh, okay, I'm building muscle, because all my other workouts were pretty inefficient because I'm tired. How am I supposed to perform this way? So I just thought it was interesting. Like sleep is vitally important when it comes to not just training but your mental performance in almost every aspect in life. So sometimes you want to push harder, but if you're not sleeping, I mean, you're kind of wasting your time, and you could even be hurting yourself.
Absolutely. It's just trying to work harder, not smarter. I mean, I remember in high school athletics, I played football, and I remember doing conditioning at the very end of practice. It's like the stupidest thing. It's like, let's just ingrain in our body poor motor patterns, right? Let's just work on and develop our skills in poor motor patterns. It's just like silly. You much rather keep the conditioning separate and the fine-tuned motor skills when you're primed, so you can really build up those motor pathways. Especially, in certain sports. I remember in football, for instance, we had linemen and linebackers running, 30 and 40 and 50-yard sprints. But it's like, wait a minute, each play, what are you running on average, 5 to 10 yards? I mean, a lineman's running 2 or 3 yards. So it's like, why aren't we doing sport-specific movement that actually carries over? And so much of these coaches, they're just doing things to do it, not because it correlates and actually really makes sense.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't be doing the same thing my 290-pound teammate's doing. He's probably going to be lifting stuff super heavy and maybe 10-yard sprints at the most for him, whereas I could probably go a little bit farther, right? So
absolutely,
super important.
And I don't want to burst everyone's bubble, but I've treated a handful of college athletes, professional football players, and such, and that's one sport I would more than likely, I could change my mind, but I will not allow my kid to play. I see lots of neurological deficits. I think you're going to be seeing an epidemic in the next 10 or 20 years of massive amounts of brain injuries. So if you're an athlete, man, especially in football, you need to be on magnesium. You need to be getting lots of ketones being produced. So ideally either lower carb, but if it's glycolytic stuff, you want to get some MCTs in there, PQQ, CoQ10. Magnesium is really important. Again, if you ever get a head injury, one of the best things you can do is go low calorie the next day or two to help increase cellular autophagy, to help clean up the damage. I mean, those are a couple of things. Sleep is huge. Like the last week, I've been going to bed at 10 o'clock and getting up at 7:30 to 8 o'clock, and I've been feeling so much better because I've been listening to my body.
Yeah. I mean, the past week, I had to take a nap in the middle of the day because I was just so exhausted. But man, I just felt so much better, so much more productive, and just being able to listen to my body and say, hey, you need to, shut it. I mean, and that's what it feels like. What happens sometimes when people end up getting sick because they're evading sleep, or they're not giving anything back to their body, and their body just says, you know what, I'm gonna just have to shut you down for you, and I'm gonna get sick, and then we're gonna force ourselves to stay in bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just felt like I didn't get to that point, but I was like, you know what, I know it's the middle of the day, but I'm going to take, an hour nap before I go back to school. And I felt like so much better. And yeah, so sleep is super important because it's no wonder why, you might be cranky or grumpy or can't really focus. And it also, we talked about like the blood sugar regulation and how that throws off, your decision making, your mood, and your focus. If you're not sleeping, that also is going to mess with your metabolism, and you're going to crave more of those things. So it just makes it so much harder. So
Yes.
you eat the right foods, you eat, some more fat. You want to balance it and make it balanced for who you are individually. But if you go to sleep more and you eat the right foods, and preferably if you can some more fats, it makes it a lot easier to regulate those cravings.
Exactly. So kind of my thing is we have macronutrient quality. I'm macronutrient agnostic, meaning you up and down, you just change the ratios up and down according to your needs. Now, my bias is low carbohydrate, high fat, moderate protein. That's my bias because I kick ass there. And I find a lot of people who are metabolically damaged kick ass there. And a lot of people have been on the low fat movement. So they just do so much better getting high quality fat in their diet. But from there are some people that are athletes that are super healthy already, and they may be able to handle a little bit of white rice or some sweet potato or a little bit of, glucose from other safe starch sources. So again, it's figure out what works for you. I ramp people low carb, super low, and then we'll ramp up and we'll taper up exercise. We'll see how we feel. We may find that we don't want to exercise that much and we just go super low ketogenic and then cycle in and out every 3 or 4 days and figure out kind of where you feel your best.
Definitely.
So what do you think? Are you ready to talk some supplements a little more?
Let's talk some supplements. Let's get to the fun part. We always got to make sure that people are doing the right things first because, like we said, supplement is a supplement. That's the whole point of it.
Okay.
But they are fun, and that's why sometimes people shoot at them too fast. So let's talk some supplements. Of course, we talked vitamin B12. It's one of those basic things that should be covered. Make sure that you're getting that. Also, we want to talk about this. It's not necessarily that new, but it's starting to get a lot more coverage, the PQQ.
Yes.
Let's talk about that and how it affects, mitochondrial health and overall brain function.
Great. So PQQ is pyrroloquinoline quinone, PQQ. It's studied, it was created in the 80s, I want to say, or discovered in the 80s, basically through like a fermentation redox reaction of certain B vitamins in the gut bacteria. It does a couple things. It helps with regeneration of mitochondria, and mitochondria are like these little powerhouse of your cells. They're like little furnaces that help create energy or ATP, which is like the cellular currency that your body runs on. It also helps regenerate mitochondria, and that's important because guess what? A lot of the medications that people are on, they actually damage their mitochondria. And a lot of the drugs and the pesticides and the environmental chemicals that are out there, they also damage your mitochondria too. So a little bit of PQQ could be something that can be very helpful. It's typically combined with CoQ10. So there's a couple brands that are out there. Dave Asprey's got a good one. I've used his. Typically the dose is between 10 to 40 milligrams, depending on where you're at. Like today I'm already on 20 milligrams. I'll hit another 10 hits after here just to keep me really focused and plowing through my day. Let me think here. My train of thought just lost for a second. I need some more PQQ. So 20 to 40 milligrams tends to be a really good place. There's been some studies to show that it helps with Parkinson's. It's also neuroprotective, and it helps with oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is kind of, the damage from free radicals, which are little guys that come around and knock off little pieces of your DNA. So that can be a good compound that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Talk a little bit about the CoQ10 and why that's linked up with it, or even why that can be beneficial itself.
Yeah, so CoQ10 is a fuel used by the mitochondria as well. It's basically kind of the coal in the mitochondrial furnace, if you will. Very helpful. A lot of people, especially people that are on statins, for instance, they're going to have problems with production of CoQ10 because the mevalonate pathway is blocked by the HMG-CoA reductase enzyme of the statin. So just basically where the statin blocks the production of cholesterol, downstream a couple of steps, you're going to see CoQ10 produced. So if you're on a statin, definitely a no-no for your brain. CoQ10's, again, it's a cellular currency. So if you're eating good grass-fed meats, you're having a little bit of glandular meat, you're going to do really, really well in that department. If you're getting over 50 years old or you're on a statin, you need to supplement with some CoQ10. That's going to be very helpful.
Okay, definitely. Another kind of basic one that people might not forget, or something that people should probably be taking anyways. Let's talk about some omega-3 or like a DHA supplement.
Yeah, so omega-3, you have two kinds of, there's three fats. There's alpha-linolenic acid, which is like a parent amino, which is a parent omega-3, comes from like flax. Not a big fan of it because only about 10 or 20% of it gets converted into your 20 carbon and 22 carbon DHA and EPA. So not a big fan. If you're insulin resistant or you have inflammation, you won't be able to make any conversion. So getting some quality EPA is going to be great to tune down inflammation. DHEA is going to be a better building block for the brain. So getting high quality EPA and DHA in will feed your prostaglandin 1 and 3 pathways, and these pathways are your natural anti-inflammatories. They activate certain enzymes known as the cyclooxygenase enzymes or the COX enzymes. These are the same enzymes that Vioxx knocked down too much and it caused heart and stroke problems. But when you take natural compounds, you tend to have a modulating effect, not a drug effect, so you don't get all the side effects.
Yeah, definitely. Another one that's good for the brain and anti-inflammation, like you mentioned, curcumin.
Curcumin's excellent. I mean, if you look at a lot of what the drug companies are doing today, they are trying to create drugs that have derivative effects of turmeric or curcumin. They're trying to create compounds that have the same effect. Because if you look at what they're doing, turmeric's having a massive effect at blocking various inflammatory mediating compounds like nuclear factor, kappa beta, TNF alpha, C-reactive protein. So very helpful. Again, if you're just taking turmeric and you have all these bad lifestyle habits that are driving inflammation, again, we kind of already addressed that. But if you're doing your best to knock down inflammation and you're taking turmeric, it's another way to just kick butt better.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I strongly recommend if you're going to do turmeric, find that people do a little bit better with a liposomal turmeric. There's a patented one by a company over in Italy. I want to say the company's Indina, and the compound is trademarked as Mariva. Yeah, Mariva's great. Liposomal, better absorption. Again, a lot of turmeric doesn't get absorbed through the gut, so liposomal tends to be a better way to go.
Yeah, liposomal is usually really good. You said Mariva. I know there's other ones that might have Mariva, and they might have black pepper in it as well, because black pepper is supposed to help with the absorption. So these are things that you should be making sure that you're looking for in your curcumin supplement.
Absolutely. And also, the CoQ10 I use is liposomal as well. I just see too many people that have gut issues, so we want to use things that have a liposome if possible, because you're just going to maximize absorption. So CoQ10 with the liposome. One of the brands that I use is called Q-Best. Q-Best.
Yeah,
I'll try to put it on my store, my site, so if people want to support the show, they can go to the justinhealth.com/shop and they can check it out there too.
Yeah, definitely. Another one that you can find in like your breakfast, like the eggs and maybe liver, is choline. Talk about maybe choline or even things that are kind of around that other nutrients like alpha GPC and huperzine, these kind of chlorogenics.
Yeah, these are some awesome compounds that are going to help with brain repair. There was a study in Italy using alpha GPC to reduce oxidative stress post-stroke. Excellent stuff there. There's actually some products that I've used that combine the alpha GPC with the PQQ. Those work very well. You also have compounds like piracetam or aniracetam. These are from the neotropic or racetam category. Piracetam's water soluble, aniracetam's fat soluble. So, taking the aniracetam with your butter coffee is a good way to do it. But that's going to upregulate and have an effect with GABA. It's going to have an effect with GABA. The mechanism really isn't known too well, but it has effects in increasing vascularity, blood flow, and also somewhat acting as a stimulant, but also having a calming effect because GABA has that like inhibitory relaxation effect too. So you get this steady relaxation, yet you're very focused at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
And you'll see things like modafinil
Mm-hmm.
or a compound known as deprenyl. Also Provigil. I think modafinil and Provigil are the same name as deprenyl, and they have a similar effect. People don't know exactly how they work, but they activate some of these acetylcholine cholinergic ACH receptors that again affect the memory. So these are good things to try. I always recommend using more of the nutrients before you go to some of these things because you may find just using things like fish oil and turmeric, and also one that everyone should have in their diet is magnesium because our diets are so deficient in magnesium. Just go to PubMed and type in incidence of magnesium deficiency and you'll see like almost a 50% reduction in the last 50 or 60 years in our food. So getting a magnesium dimalate or a magnesium glycinate, or if you have some brain issues, you can use magnesium threonate and do a topical and have it go right to the brain and have a dampening anti-inflammatory effect. Fair amount of studies on using magnesium to help with brain inflammation. There's been studies on rats, studies on people. Dr. Russell Blaylock has found that when he put patients after brain surgery on magnesium, they recovered and did so much better than patients that weren't put on magnesium. And he was just looking at all of his counterparts that weren't doing it, and his patients would just get better faster just using things like turmeric, magnesium, fish oil, and avoiding a lot of the oxidative stress compounds like glutamate and MSG and aspartame and Splenda, things that cause microglial activation. These are the white blood cells of the brain.
Yeah, definitely makes a big difference. Now, you mentioned the racetams, and these are kind of like in this like weird category of like not really 100% sure if they're supplements or if they're pharmaceutical. They're kind of in between, and always, of course, people will be smart out there when it comes to these pharmaceuticals. But had you gotten a chance to use some of the racetams and just tell me like your experience about it?
I've done well with the piracetam. I pretty much top out at about 800 milligrams. I do well with that in my coffee. Well, not in my coffee, but I'll take it with my coffee.
Yeah.
I like the PQQ. 20 to 40 milligrams tends to do awesome. Also a big fan of adrenal glandulars. Taking adrenal glandulars that have adrenal support tend to be helpful. I'm a big fan of adaptogenic herbs.
Yes.
And these are a family of herbs that can help modulate their stress response up or down. So if you're feeling low and you need that extra kick, it'll help bring you up. If you're overly stressed, it'll help bring you down. One of the biggest ones that I'm just a huge fan of, and it also has a nice profile to help with sleep, is ashwagandha, or with Thania somnifera. Ashwagandha is actually Sanskrit. It means something like to impart the strength of the horse. So it's a pretty cool little translation. But they did a study here. I'll kind of reiterate the study. It was double-blind, placebo-controlled study. And they had 64 subjects, and they were giving about 300 milligrams of ashwagandha twice a day for 60 days. So they started off the study giving people these general health questionnaire 28. It's basically a questionnaire that's been kind of certified and assessed, and it looks at anxiety, it looks at insomnia, it looks at social dysfunction, depression, and then it also had an anxiety stress scale, or the DASS, along with it. So they looked at these various scales, and we can put it in the show notes, but you're going to see the placebo, and you'll see the actual study where they use the groups that use the ashwagandha right afterwards. Massive improvement in stress reduction with the group that was actually using the ashwagandha. Every single category improved. The PSS questionnaire improved. The GHQ questionnaire improved. The social anxiety questionnaire improved. And there was a significant difference in the modulation of salivary cortisol as well, which is really cool. And that was the Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine. Again, you're not going to see much of these studies here in the U.S. because of the competition with the pharmaceutical companies. You're just not going to see it, but you'll see it in other journals.
Yeah. And it's funny about that too. You mentioned with the different, like I've taken something called like Tianjin has a lot of these adaptogenic herbs. But even if you go to the like a natural food store and you go to the vitamin section and you grab a lot of these like brain boosting stacks, a lot of them are going to have amino acids that kind of influence the mood, right? Like L-tyrosine and L-theanine and GABA and all these different amino acids that are kind of like mood regulators. And we notice that when we're in a good mood, we're able to function better. Like we mentioned before, if you're grumpy, if you're stuck in traffic and you're starting to yell, you're probably not going to make the best decisions. You're not going to be focused. But when you're in a good mood and you're relaxed and you're able to focus, then you'll feel better and you'll make better decisions and you'll eat better. If you're emotionally distressed and you have a lower EQ, you might end up like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to eat like way too much dark chocolate and just eat a thing of ice cream and sit on my couch and watch a movie or something, right? So our mood is greatly important too. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of drugs out there to cover up and change the mood. So it's going to be hard competition in the U.S. to kind of fight with the pharmaceutical mood enhancers.
Exactly. And let me just read the conclusion of the study. So again, this was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, 60 days with all the various questionnaires that assessed everything and all the salivary cortisol that also looked at, a physiological stress response. The conclusion was the findings of this study suggest that a high concentration, full spectrum ashwagandha root extract safely and effectively improves an individual's resistance towards stress, thereby improves self-assessed quality of life. And that's the Journal of Indian Psychology and Medicine, 2012, July. And I'll shoot you over that link here, Barris, and we'll put it in the show notes. But this is important, getting a high-quality herb. And again, using the whole herb, I find people tend to do better with the whole herb, not just like a standardized extract, but the whole herb. And I try to make sure the herbs that I procure are all organic and independently tested to make sure there's no concentration of chemicals or arsenic or metals or things like that.
Definitely. Now, one thing that we didn't mention yet, which is probably one that I think a lot of people use, is caffeine. So talk about caffeine real quick.
Yeah, so caffeine can be an awesome source, an awesome boost because it's going to help. One, it's going to increase free fatty acid oxidation, so your body's going to mobilize more free fatty acid and hopefully start to burn them for fuel. Hence, if we're doing a little bit of caffeine in our coffee, right? Caffeine also has various alkaloids that are antioxidant. If you're choosing good quality, clean coffee, that's better, without the pesticides and chemicals. If we add in the butter is going to make the caffeine kind of more time released. Time release is good so we don't get a massive bolus of caffeine, which is going to shoot up our blood sugar. So we get more of a magic carpet caffeine ride, if you will. And then we add in the MCT, which is going to increase more free fatty acid precursors into our bloodstream. It's like we got it made. We're set because we're stimulating more fat burning. We're time releasing the caffeine, so we're not getting a punctuated stress response, more of a time release. And then we have the MCT, which drives that precursor for ketones. So our brain's got this steady source of fuel for 3 to 6 hours. It's great.
Yeah, and I hear that that the paracetam. I've only used paracetam before. I've been meaning to try some of the other, but I heard that caffeine actually helps with the racetam and actually helps basically make it work in a synergistic way. So if you are taking one of those, having that bulletproof coffee might be even more beneficial. So it's kind of neuroprotective and will help your brain function very well. And then, making sure that you're eating the right diets and maybe you can pick and choose some of these other different stacks that you might want to add in to try to up your performance.
Yeah, and again, like you got some studies here, like the Cochrane Collaborative. That's like a um, big like review collaborative that looks at studies and looks at meta-analysis. They found that piracetam, there was no evidence to support it, but I mean, there are other studies out there that show positive effects with post-stroke. There are studies out there that show positive effects, following heart and brain surgery,
Hmm.
positive effects with epilepsy and aphasia, and there's also positive effects with learning disability people. So again, like why is the Cochrane Collaborative seeing a bad result? I mean, you got some studies, not all studies are created the same way. So I think if you looked at some of the studies that were producing positive effects, you're probably going to see something different in the dosaging that
Hmm.
isn't there with the studies that were having negative effects. And you see that a lot with herbs and nutrients where they're just using either bad quality nutrients or herbs, or they aren't using a therapeutic dose to get the right response.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Anything else that you wanted to add in?
So with piracetam, I kind of tapped out at 800 milligrams, figure out kind of where you're
Same
at.
here.
I
Hmm.
couldn't go higher. I just felt like crap if I went higher. So the big ones for me are going to be ashwagandha, magnesium. Let's see here, PQQ, CoQ10. These are all simple ones. You can add in the piracetam, the foundational stuff like MCT, good quality fat in your coffee, stabilizing blood sugar and sleep. I'd also say there's other families of adaptogenic herbs that work very well. Some like eleuthero or Siberian ginseng works excellent. There's a protocol known as the Russian protocol that's used in a way to allow eleuthero to have anabolic effects and increasing sex hormones like DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone. And that's a anabolic sex hormone that if you look in the research, it's going to have neuroprotective effects. Just Google DHEA and
Hmm.
neuroprotective effects, and you're going to have really good support there.
Yeah,
So
keep your
using
mind
that,
down.
yeah, that's another great way to boost up your anabolic sex hormones that will help repair your brain. Even some people, if they're adrenally stressed, taking a little bit of sublingual bioidentical DHEA can be very helpful too to protect your neurons.
Hmm. Definitely. Same
And
thing
one more
here.
thing too, if you're like a female who's menopausal, with that sudden drop in estrogen come menopause, because your ovaries aren't spitting it out like it used to when you were cycling, that sudden drop can actually cause brain inflammation. And estrogen tends to be very anti-inflammatory. The estriol, especially, tends to be very anti-inflammatory for the brain. So if you are menopausal and you're starting to have some issues, look at getting your adrenals looked at as well as getting your female hormones supported to help prevent that brain stress. And also female hormones in women who are cycling, low progesterone or estrogen dominance can also create brain stress. And if you look at progesterone, that tends to also be very neuroprotective. You just want to make sure you take it in an appropriate way that doesn't screw up your cycle. And in my opinion, I find cycling females do not do better with progesterone cream because you can't time it right in their cycle. It spills over to the follicular phase and just messes up the timing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You got to make sure that you're balancing it right.
Yeah,
So yeah, same thing here. Doing a lot of the MCT, um, doing the different adaptogenic herbs on a daily basis. I take turmeric and
that's
green.
another good one. Yep.
Yeah,
Green
like
tea.
turmeric and green tea, bacopa,
Yep.
like on a daily basis. So all of those are very beneficial. And making sure that I'm getting a lot of fats in my diet. Usually, when I'm making a smoothie, I usually have like my sweetener is usually going to be berries, like frozen wild berries. So I'm making sure they're not like super duper sweet, but I'm getting a lot of the lower
Hmm.
glycemic type fruits that have more of the antioxidants. And then at the end, I might dump a couple, like 3 raw eggs in there, and now I'm getting some of the B vitamins and choline and different
Yes.
parts. So making sure that we're getting a lot of those brain nutrients in there.
Yeah, there was
So
a
yeah,
study looking
definitely.
at blueberries because of the OPCs in the blueberries, the oligomeric
Yeah.
proanthocyanidins. They're the various anti-inflammatory bioflavonoids. They did a study looking at blueberries and it having a reduced neurological inflammatory effect. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty cool. Just a handful of blueberries.
Yeah, exactly. Let food be thy medicine. It's so
Yeah.
crazy that, you know, we're looking at food right here and how it can be beneficial, but somehow we're just like, oh yeah, we'll just wait for people to have, Alzheimer's and then just give them drugs. Like, Or we can just eat really, really good food.
Yeah, yeah. And then also, I forgot to even mention one last thing. Gut infections can definitely cause brain inflammation because these
Yes.
gut infections, whether it's SIBO producing lithocolic acid or endotoxins or mycotoxins from fungus or the various biotoxins from parasites, these can toxin and poison the brain. I mean, acetaldehyde produced from fungus can make you feel drunk and brain fog. I find when people go on an anti-candida program, if it's candida, they feel significantly better. If they have gut infections, getting rid of those infections help them feel significantly better. If they have conditions like Lyme or Lyme co-infections like Ehrlichia or Bartonella or Babesia, things like that, getting those infections cleared out and supporting the immune system, they do feel a lot better.
Yeah. So let's making sure that we eat right for our type, and if we can, if our body allows us, probably more fats, right? And some of these really high quality MCT fats. Making sure that we get enough sleep and treating ourselves right, getting some relaxation, making sure we have high quality sleep,
Yeah.
moving appropriately, and making our muscles move and increasing our brain capacity. And especially if you, like, we interviewed oh my goodness, I'm losing it. The guy from, see, now I'm gonna feel bad. Now I haven't eaten all of these beneficial foods yet this morning, so my brain's not super on point. Um, but I'll remember it eventually. But he talked about,
Is this the guy that does the all-day energy diet?
no,
Not Yuri? Okay.
not Yuri, but do what you love for exercise, right?
Yeah.
So if you can, if you want to play like some pickup basketball or
Are you
tennis,
thinking of Mark Sisson?
not Mark Sisson.
Okay.
We interviewed him. Um, well, we didn't interview Mark Sisson too, but
Oh, I think you're thinking of Kevin Geary from
Kevin Geary. There you go.
Rebooted Body. Yeah.
Rebooted Body. I was thinking of
Exactly.
Fit Life. I'm like, that's not
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Kevin Geary. Yep.
Yeah, I had the K in my head, but just not. Yeah, Kevin Geary, when he talked about do what you love,
Exactly.
hiking, doing all these things, you're gonna, especially if you can have like some kind of sport, you're gonna be involving your brain more, right? So these are fun ways that you can do things. Go swimming, move your body, your brain's gonna get activated, and plus you're gonna get put in a good mood. So when you're in a better mood, you're more motivated to do what you need to do. I find it a lot easier when I'm happy and I'm in a good mood that I'm going to cook a really good meal that's healthy for me versus like if I feel like crap, it's really easy to fall into the trap to be like, well, let me just order a pizza. You know what I mean? Like, so making sure that you get these things down, eating the right foods, getting enough sleep, um, moving your body, and then the cherry on the top, is once you get those foundational things put down, what kind of supplements can you do to get to the next level, right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and like you mentioned before, if you still have, you mentioned this analogy before, you still feel that e-brake, like you're working so hard, but there's
Yeah.
still things not there. You probably have some things holding you back. And you mentioned the gut infections, or you might be eating some food that you might be sensitive to, right? So
Exactly.
making sure we get those out of the system.
Yeah. Making sure if you've got hormonal stress, get your adrenals or thyroid looked at. If you got chronic infections or leaky gut stuff, get your gut looked at. Again, if your thyroid's not working well, you need thyroid hormone to activate basically cellular metabolism in almost all cells. So if you got low thyroid hormone, you want to get that fixed because it's taking PQQ or even CoQ10 is not going to be the answer. It'll be a band-aid, but it won't be the real true answer. So we have like things in the functional medicine hierarchy that should be in alignment before we do other things. But it's just a good starting point.
Yes. Definitely sounds awesome. Anything else that we wanted to add today?
I would say everyone or anyone listening that wants to start this out is just get their diet and their blood sugar and their sleep going first. Start their day with momentum, whether it's getting up and doing a Tabata or a high-intensity interval, having some good protein and fat to start their day, put some MCT or butter in their coffee, take a little bit of magnesium or some adaptogenic herbs to start your day. You're going to just create momentum, and momentum continues to create more momentum. And just starting your day on this upward plane so you feel like you're running downhill, not running uphill is always helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. make sure that you guys go to iTunes and leave a review. So if you go to beyondwellnessradio.com, there's a button right there that you just click and it'll send you right to it. Makes it real easy. Continue to send in your questions. So if you guys have any questions that you want answered from me or the doctor, make sure that you send that in. And you guys can also, if you guys have somebody that, is like a great doctor that you have, or is a great practitioner that you have read their book and we might have not come across them, send us an email and we'll go ahead and check them out and see if we might want to bring them on the show, because there's always these awesome people that are popping up, but sometimes they're not always on our radar for a while. So if you guys have any suggestions for a guest or someone who you want to hear on the show, let us know and we'll reach out to them and see if we can get them on the show. So definitely, if you guys are finding that you might have any of these e-breaks like symptoms and you feel like you're not going 100% like you could be, make sure that you go to justinhealth.com and schedule yourself a consultation. So that way, Dr. Justin could do his detective work and see if there's something hidden that you haven't found that could be holding you back. And again, go to beyondwellnessradio.com and sign up to the newsletter. That's the best way to stay updated and have all of the information available to you. So thank you guys again. Go ahead.
Thanks so much, Barris, and everyone listening. Sharing is caring, so keep sharing the show with all your friends and family that could benefit.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com/question. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.